Hey guys, what's up? Darklaw here. Well, now that I've finished showing my PS2 collection, which was quite a long one, I'm now moving on to another one, and this one is going to be on my Sega Dreamcast collection. For the Dreamcast, I don't have too many games. I only have like 15 approximately, maybe a little bit more depending on what you would consider. But I would say my collection is pretty good. I haven't had a Dreamcast for too long. I've only had one since February of this year, about 8 months, as of the recording of this video. But I'd say my collection has gone pretty solid overall. I am honestly shocked I hadn't played this system sooner because this thing is freaking awesome. There's a lot of great games. It's a shame that the system died so soon, thanks to a lot of crappy financial decisions from Sega of America on their part. It still lived on in Japan, though, leading up to 2007, I think, or 2008, one of the two. But either way, it failed in the West, unfortunately, and that's a shame because the system was full of fantastic games. It's like the unsung hero of the sixth generation, I say. I mean, the PS2 is still my favorite console, but the Dreamcast is undoubtedly one of the best consoles of that generation, so anyways, without further ado, let's get on to it. First, I have Quake 3 Arena, which is a first-person shooter, of course. Many of you all know what it is. It's a good game, but the Dreamcast version is not the best way to play this. I'd say go for the PS2 or the PC versions. This version is good, but it is kind of awkward to control because the Dreamcast isn't exactly great with shooters. It's still good, though. At least not FPS games. The House of the Dead 2, which is one of my favorite arcade games. I play the arcade version a lot. Like every arcade I go to, I always play this game or Galaga. That's like one of my favorite games in the arcades. And I also have the Wii version as well, and it's pretty much the same, just with motion controls and some extra content. But great game, fantastic, so much fun to play. I honestly can't get enough of it. Next, I have Vanishing Point, which is actually a really fun racing game for the system. It's also on the PS1, which I also have that version as well. It's good on both systems, but this is the best version to play. It's not your ordinary racing game. Like, you do have the standard edition licensed cars like Ford, BMW, Volkswagen, I think Jaguar, I'm not sure, but you got Mini Coopers, Dodge, all that good stuff. But comparatively, this is not like most other racing games where you have to try and finish first place by beating all the other cars on the stage. This one's a little different in that it's about it's about beating the game's best time, like trying to get faster than trying to get the highest record you possibly can and not taking too much hits. Not only that, the physics are a little bit different, like compared to other racing games, where you manually correct your steering and all that. This one, you basically kind of have to trust the game to correct the steering for you. But to balance it out, they made the steering like incredibly sensitive. But I think the way to auto was, I think basically allowing the car to correct itself was probably the best they could have done to make you really think about what you're doing with your races. So it does make them feel a little more planned out instead of like just your typical racer, which I actually like. At first, I was a little confused with it at first, but I got really into it the more I played it, and honestly, I highly recommend checking it out. It's not very expensive either. I got mine for only like 20 bucks, so definitely worth playing. There's the PS1 version is also really good too, but the Dreamcast version is the better way to play it. However, if you don't have a Dreamcast, the PS1 version is still a good way to play. So if you don't have one, then you definitely can't go wrong with it. This one's the King of Fighters Collection, Volume 2, which contains pretty much every King of Fighters game that ever appeared on the Dreamcast, from Dream Match 1999 all the way up to KOF 2002. Here's the weird thing, though. Okay, so yeah, as you can see here, this is clearly a reproduction of these games, but they all still work really well. considering the Dreamcast doesn't have very good security. But, yeah. Anyways, so this is KOF 98, but here's the thing. This isn't actually a Dreamcast game, it's just a port someone did of the Neo Geo CD version, and it's fine for the most part, but the problem is the sound is kind of broken. It doesn't run quite as smooth, but it's not terrible. But the King of Fighters 99 Dream Match, they kind of use the wrong logo, they kind of use the wrong text. It's supposed to be a Dream Match 1999, not KOF 99 Dream Match, but whatever. But this is KOF Dream Match 1999, and it's fine. It's pretty good. It's basically the Dreamcast version of KOF 98, but with some three-dimensional backgrounds, which is kind of cool for the time. It's a good game. And then this selection contains KOF Evolution, which it was called here in the States, but in other countries it was called KOF 99 Evolution, which is a Dreamcast port of KOF 99, which, in my opinion, is actually pretty underrated. I know a lot of people hate it, but I actually kind of liked it. And KOF 2000 is pretty good as well, and KOF 2002 is an absolute classic. And KOF 2001, it's alright, but it isn't my favorite one of this series, but it's a good selection of games, though. Anyways, so that is it. While one of the games isn't even an actual Dreamcast game, the rest of them are Dreamcast games, so it counts. But KOF Collection Volume 2, pretty solid collection of games here. And then there's another repro, which has a bunch of different Capcom games. Capcom Fighting Collection, which contains Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Third Strike, Street Fighter 3, Super Street Fighter 2 X, Grandmaster Challenge, or Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo in the States, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 X, or Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo in the States, Capcom vs. SNK 2, and Ikaruga. Now, most of these games were released in Japan. The only ones that actually got a North American release here are MVC 2 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. The rest of them were Japan-only releases. So it was nice to see someone actually bring this to the table and make a ROM hack compiling these together. And considering how expensive Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is on the Dreamcast, I thought this would be good to have. And it also has Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which is great. And of course, Capcom vs. SNK 2 is an absolute smash. It's fantastic. And Ikaruga, which is kind of strange seeing it on here, considering it's not even a fighting game, it's a shmup, and it's not even by Capcom either, it's by Treasure. But it's still really good, though. I mean, the Dreamcast version is just as good as the GameCube version, in my opinion. And Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Dreamcast is pretty good, and same with Puzzle Fighter 2 on the Dreamcast. They're all really good ports, and there's even a bunch of extra goodies, so that's pretty cool. Daytona USA. This wasn't a bad game. I actually thought it was kind of fun on the Dreamcast, but I will admit the steering is a little oversensitive, but I actually had some fun with it compared to other people. Capcom vs. SNK, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was a fun fighting game. I do think the second one is a little bit better, but I've played the first one so many times on the PS1, and I loved it to death. But the original Dreamcast version is still great. Absolutely had a lot of fun with it. Illbleed, which is actually one of my favorite horror games. I freaking love this game. This is so good. Okay, maybe not super good, like, objectively, but I still love this game. I think it's actually quite interesting. It's one of the more interesting horror games on the system, let alone one of the more interesting horror games I've ever played. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting, very creative. It's got some really, it's actually got some pretty freaky shit here. It's a pretty cheesy game, like the voice acting is terrible, and when the characters speak, their mouths don't move whatsoever, which is really weird. I don't get it, but that's how it is here, and the combat is just absolute crap. Like, Like, at first, you're just bitch-slapping opponents, and then you get a bat, which is better, but the camera angle is what kind of screws the combat up tremendously here, because when you're trying to kill enemies, it's a real pain in the ass with that camera, and sometimes you don't even know where the hell you're going. And sometimes the fights just can be extremely pathetic, because sometimes you'll just end up killing a certain enemy with one blow, even though you'd think they would take more hits, but even so, though, I still think the game is really good. I do like the settings it covers, and I do think the concept is kind of interesting. It isn't perfect, it's certainly got problems, but it's a pretty fun game. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Actually freaked me out at a few points. Marvel vs. Capcom, the original. I freaking love this game. I've played this one a lot. I do like the second one a little bit more, but the first game is still a ton of fun. Blue Stinger. After playing this and the Dino Crisis games, I've kind of realized this isn't really that much of a Dino Crisis clone. It's kind of its own thing for the most part. It does have dinosaurs in it, and it does have some survival horror elements to it, but it's not really a full-on survival horror. It's more like an action-adventure game. But I really enjoyed it. I actually had a lot more fun with this than I thought I was going to. The voice acting is pretty damn bad, but the game overall is actually quite fun. It's a little bit awkward to control at first, but once you get used to it, it's not too bad, and the concept is actually kind of cool. And the music is great. I absolutely enjoy the music. It's not too expensive either. I got it for like $40, which is probably one of the cheaper Dreamcast games you can get, because there are not a lot of Dreamcast games that are cheap. Honestly, if you can't get some of those for a good price, just get the repros. Soul Calibur, the original. Another really good game, and also not super expensive. I got this one for also $40. This is a great game. I had a lot more fun with this than I thought I was going to. I played Soul Calibur 2 all the time on PS2, and then I played 4 and 5 on PS3 a lot. But I never got to play the original Soul Calibur very much. I played it in the arcade once, and that was it. I don't really remember playing much of it. I just remember I played it at a theater in Washington, and that was about it. And then I played the demo of the 360 version, but that was it. It was just a demo. So I didn't actually get to play the Dreamcast version, or at least the original version, legitimately, besides the arcade, until I got this. And honestly, I don't know what I've been missing, because this is actually one of the best entries in this series. I've had a ton of fun with this one. It actually plays incredibly well, even for not the first entry in this series, but even for a Dreamcast game released in 1999, which I think was a launch game, this turned out to be a really damn good game. Like, it plays well, it controls well, and it still looks amazing. I am honestly quite impressed. It's a huge hardware pusher, and to think that it's a launch game is a real shock to my system, because wow, it still looks great and still plays great too. This is a near perfect game. I highly recommend it. Vigilante 8-Second Offense. I prefer the Twisted Metal games a little bit more, but this is a pretty good game though. It's just a little bit more realistic in its gameplay style, but you still just blow the shit up out of other cars and all that stuff, and it's a lot of fun to play. Slave Zero. This was the first game I got for my Dreamcast. I honestly wanted to like this game, but unfortunately, the Dreamcast version does not run very well. There's a lot of frame rate drops, a lot of sound cuts, and honestly, the game just does not run too well. Like, it almost feels like the console is about to freaking explode when you play this. It tanks so damn much. Almost unplayable at times, and the combat is just kind of awkward with using the Dreamcast controls. It probably is a lot better on the PC, but the Dreamcast version, not a great way to play this. Like, there is a good game here, but unfortunately, this is just not the best way to play this. I only got this because it was a cheaper Dreamcast game, and I wanted something to get until I could get something better for my system. Next game I have is Expendable, which was actually a lot of fun. It's also an early release game for the Dreamcast. I had some enjoyment out of this one. It's basically just a top-down run-and-gun shooter where you just go out and blow shit up, and it's a lot of fun. there really isn't much else to this game, so you just blow stuff up. So, yeah, honestly, what more can you want? It's great. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's not expensive either. I got it for like $30, which is actually not half bad for a Dreamcast game. And the last game I got is Virtual On Oratorio Tangram, which is the second entry in the Virtual On series. I have the first one on the Saturn. I'll show my Saturn collection a little later. But this game is amazing. I enjoyed the hell out of this one. I do enjoy the Saturn game a little bit more, but the Dreamcast game is still a ton of fun, with great graphics, lots of characters, great gameplay, fun controls, and with great music too. It's honestly just absolute bliss. So damn good. One of my favorite Dreamcast games. Anyways, that is my Dreamcast collection. Not too many, but I'd say my collection's pretty good so far where it is. I definitely plan on getting more for it in the future. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.